Welcome to another episode of Afterlife Mysteries. I am Kalila Smith, and joining me is my co host, Billy Roberts, all the way from the UK. And we are going to be continuing our discussion from last week on the subtle anatomy. So, welcome, Billy. Hi, how are you? Good
Hi,
day to you.
nice to be back.
Nice to see you again, as always. As always. So, we were in such a wonderful conversation last week, and there's just so much to this subtle anatomy. I mean, Billy's mentioned it in several of his books, and we didn't really even get but to scratch the surface of this because it is so detailed, but it's just so fascinating, and it's a part of all of us, not just mediums. Every living being out here has this energy field and this auric field that's going on. They've even photographed, if you look at the aura photography, you can see where they photograph leaves, trees, everything has this energy to it. It's the universal life force. So, Billy, I know that these things, I've heard you say before that these things actually communicate. The chakras and the nadis and all communicate with the aura back and forth. Could you kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, to begin with, uh, 30, 40, 50 years ago, the aura, the chakras, they were just a metaphysical concept. But now it's a scientific as well as a metaphysical, because as you've just said, the aura can be photographed in color. Now, Semyon and Valentina Kalian were the first ones to photograph a monochrome image using a very crude apparatus which photographed the energy emanating from the hands. And they used it as a diagnostic tool because they worked out that the energy radiating from certain parts of the fingers equated to some kind of energy levels in the body. And they could diagnose illness through it, or so they said. And then Walter Kilner, a radiologist in St. Thomas's Hospital in London, he actually created the Kilner screens. It was two glass plates, a dikinin or a coal tar dye placed between it. And if you stood a person behind the screens, it enabled them to enabled you to see the aura, this emanation of energy. And he worked out that the aura was much more than a vaporous mass. Where it was dark in places, he could work out that there was a problem with energy flow. Now, the chakras, they seem to be, as I said last time, they're sort of mini transformers. They modify energy coming into the body, and it's their job to transmute it, to modify it and discharge it. Now, we know, don't we, that the aura is a sort of a medium through which the spirit world can communicate. But much more than that, it's not just for mediums, as you just said. Everybody has an energy field, and it's quite extensive. Now, if you look at a blind person, if you look at their aura, the aura is equal front and back. It's the same all round. It's an auric shell. But in the likes of you and me, who can see, albeit very little, my eyesight's terrible, our energy field is shorter in the front and more extensive at the back. And that's what enables us to feel people approaching us behind
Okay.
when we can't see them. But with the blind person, it's equal all round, which enables them to negotiate their way around obstacles so they can sense things. And I've known some blind mediums who were quite exceptional in as much they could describe persons, the clothes they were wearing, the lady in the red coat, the lady with long red hair, because they just sensed it. So we know that the aura is sort of it's a radar device. The chakras enable the energy to be discharged and enable an individual to communicate with disembodied souls. Now, also, a lot of people don't understand that the chakras affect a person's gait, the way they walk, the way their body language. If you see a person walking down the street and he doesn't move his arms are just steadily held by his side. We call them the Muladhara men. These are people who live solely in the Muladhara chakra. They don't think beyond that. And some people never aspire to grow beyond the Muladhara chakra. And we said that a baby will have 7 chakras potentially on its birth. And every year, another chakra begins to open. Now, when the child is 7, all the chakras are active. And it's in what we call full light. And just to remind you of what I said, our parents chastise us. They dress us in the clothes, the colors they think suit us, and they make us do exactly what they want. So our parents effectively, they program us. And we have to, and these chakras alter polarity. But the chakras affect the aura. They have an impact on the aura. So everything you do, every action you make, everything you say, everything you do in life affects the polarity of the chakras. And in turn, that will affect the aura. Now, if you're walking through a woodland by yourself, walking out with a dog or cat, whichever the case may be, and you're by yourself early in the morning, but there happens to be somebody a couple of yards away, somebody who's watching you, not for any particular reason, but just aware of your presence, and you are unaware of theirs. This will affect your gait. It will affect the movement of your limbs, the muscles. You'll find it very difficult to walk in a very quick way because your aura is affected. Your energy field extends to sense danger. So that energy field extends quite a distance from you. But people who are mediumistically inclined, they tend to allow disembodied souls to infiltrate the aura. Now, if you're not experienced, if you're naive, God knows what you're allowing into your energy field, because you need to have some kind of consciousness and awareness of what you're dealing with. And, not all spirits are good.
Right. No,
So that's what I'm up
that's
to at
very
the moment.
important. Yeah. That's we've talked about that before with the vagabonds of the spirit world, and this is why it's so important to understand how this works, especially if you're a medium or trying to be a medium, studying to be a medium rather, developing your mediumship. This is really important because that's the key right there to whether or not you're actually connecting with loved ones on the other side, or you're just picking up earthbound spirits in your auric field. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a huge difference. A friend of mine who's a medium always says anybody can talk to the dead, but they're not necessarily doing mediumship.
Yeah.
And that's true. And that's where, and these are the spirits that are actually going to present themselves as something else. And I know so many people who are not mediums, but they work with the paranormal, and they just suck right into this. And I'll have them, they'll tell me, oh, and the little boy was holding my hand, and the little boy was here, and the little boy
Mm-hmm.
was telling me this. And I'm like, that might not
Yeah.
be a little boy. Okay.
Yeah.
That might be something totally different, but you want it to be that little boy, so it's going to present itself as that little boy and let
Yeah.
you think that, and that's how it's going to get close to you and make that attachment. And that's what's so dangerous, not just for mediums, because lots of times trained mediums are going to know the difference. It's, people who are just walking into these paranormal situations with very little training. And one of the things, and I'm hoping it's changed, but I know in the very beginning, before all of these television shows, when they first were coming out, there were so many people who said, well, I just work with the scientific end. And I said, well, what does that mean? And they said,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
I just work with the equipment. I take the equipment. I want the scientific documentations, but I don't believe in all that supernatural stuff. And it's like, okay, what are you documenting then?
Mm-hmm.
What
Yeah.
exactly are you documenting? Because you do realize that you're dealing with supernatural. And that's why I've always been a stickler when I taught, paranormal classes and so forth, and I'm sure you as well. You have the scientific equipment to back it up, but you always have a qualified medium on staff that can interpret what's going on, because otherwise you've just got people who are just blindly walking into a situation, and they may be mediumistic and not know it, and they may be sensitive to psychic energy and confuse that as mediumship. So you've got all of this confusion, these mixed messages coming into your auric field that you
Yeah,
aren't trained to interpret, and that's where it gets dangerous.
exactly. And I think also you have to define experienced medium, because a lot of mediums put themselves on a pedestal and claim to be experienced, but it's only by observation. I mean, I've found I've been invited to many different groups, and the people in charge of these groups sometimes leave a lot to be desired. And I think to myself, well, this isn't right, because it's an emotional and psychological minefield. I mean, people can say what they like, but if you've got a history of mental problems or nervous problems, I always say you should not be involved in the paranormal until you've really, cured yourself and
Right.
got yourself more grounded, because it can precipitate a lot. It can open a can of worms and cause a lot of problems. And
Oh, absolutely.
not all clairvoyants are mediums, and not all mediums are clairvoyant.
That's right.
And I always
That is
say
right.
a medium is damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. So it doesn't matter how good you are as a medium, you'll always get somebody criticizing you.
Yeah.
If you're terrible, people will criticize you as well.
No,
So
oh, absolutely. Even if you're good, they're going to criticize you. There's always, you got the whole skeptic thing where
yeah,
they're going to criticize either way. But now what can someone do, whether they're a medium or not? What can people do to keep this relationship with the chakras and the aura healthy? Because if that, as above, so below. If you're not healthy in these
yeah,
energetic bodies and in this energy flow, and that's what, Ayurvedic medicine's all about, Chinese medicine's all about, the meridians, everything. If the energy, on an energetic level, if you are not healthy, eventually that's going to work its way onto the physical body,
yeah, exactly.
and it causes disease. And
Yeah,
this is where, by the time it becomes, that's what a lot of people don't understand. They'll say, oh, I'm sick but I'm taking herbs. It's like, okay, no, that's preventative. By the time it comes into the physical body and gets on an organ level,
exactly.
it's already in the physical body.
Yeah,
You've got nothing but Western medicine and hope that it helps.
yeah.
So, how do we stay healthy utilizing this knowledge with this communication that's going on with these subtle energies?
Well, first of all, the mind is the common denominator. The mind is what controls everything. And meditation is probably the best way of stabilizing the aura and keeping it healthy. I mean, the yogi masters would advocate a cold salt bath or dipping into salty water, mountain water or whatever. Breathing is important. It's important for everybody.
Right.
Pranayama simply means the control of prana, but all the chakras, each individual chakra um, relates to a geometric shape called a yantra or bija yantra. And then we have a sound that emanates from each chakra. Now, this sound is called a bija mantra, bija meaning seed, and a mantra is just a word that's repeated. And each chakra will have a different meaning, a different yantra and a different bija mantra. Lam, Lam, Vam, Ram, Yam, Ham, Sham, Om. They're the seven bija mantras that can be recited in sequential order. You don't have to just, if you concentrate on one particular chakra, then you'll cause imbalance. But if you're not into all that, all the chanting, meditation is important. whether it's a 10-minute cycle or whether you can meditate for a half an hour, you need to turn off and focus your attention on the individual chakras. But I always, in one of my books, I give the actual Lam Vam Ram Yam Ham Sham Om. But there are also things like different Buddhic mantras which can be used. I mean, you can look at them anywhere on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
But meditation is the only really way to stabilize, the only safe way of harnessing the energies that come in. Now, the other interesting thing, and again, this is my interpretation and my opinion, is that I said last week that the planet is a living organism. But the planet, if that's the case, then the planet too has chakras or similar energy points.
Right.
Now, these can be, in ancient times, they would build monasteries on ley lines because it was laid out perfectly. And they built monasteries and holy places on these particular points. Now, our chakras, I believe, are connected by some kind of umbilical cord to the planet upon which we live. And I do believe that development, when we develop our spiritual skills or mediumistic skills even, it's a way of working out our own karmas, working our way through these umbilical cords. Often we blame circumstances or other people for the things that go wrong in our lives. That's not the case. The responsibility is your own. You are the architect of your own destiny by the way that you think. So karma comes into it all. And the chakras play an important part in the manifestation of consciousness, the manifestation of your abilities. A policeman who is good at his job, everybody else is oblivious to the fact that this person did the blag, did the robbery. But this one policeman is intent on catching the criminal, saying, no, he's the perpetrator of the crime, and he knows he did it. That's because he functions in a particular chakra, perhaps the one between the brows, which is called ajna. And this is the intuitive chakra that develops in most people who work in that kind of business. A teacher who's good at his or her job will also have a very active chakra in the head. It's all to do with the head. And certainly ajna and vishuddha is the chakra for listening, for hearing, not just supersensual sounds, not just hearing disembodied sounds, but also for listening to other things, listening to nature. Now, women more than men have something called peripheral hearing. In fact, a woman can be we've talked about this before, in a crowded room, engrossed in conversation, but at the same time, she knows exactly what's going on in other areas of the room, so she can listen to different people's conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Women are good at that. And that's to do with, again, it's to do with vishuddha. A lot of clairaudient mediums, I've said before, have a thyroid problem, or they may have diabetes or pancreatic problems, because it affects the hormonal system as well. And the chakras do have an impact and do affect the whole body, the way it moves. You can also tell the way a person moves. I suppose you've heard of kinesiology.
Oh yeah. I used to be a massage. I used to actually not only be a massage therapist, but I taught in the
That's right.
massage
I
therapy
know you
program. So yeah,
said
yeah,
this.
absolutely,
But you
absolutely,
can
all about
apply
the
that.
movement.
Apply it to the chakras. If you get the person to extend, say, the left hand and place the right hand on the chakras, starting with the one at the coccyx or the lowest chakra and working their way up, you'll see which one is weakest or which ones are strongest. And kinesiology is a very simple way of ascertaining which chakras are strong. And you said
Right.
last week about dowsing them with a crystal or some
Right.
other.
That was one of the ways I learned
You can
it
do,
to
you can
see
do that.
which way they were, if they were open or closed. But I don't know that that was necessarily correct. You know, I
Yeah,
mean,
well, it
that's
does. I
just,
mean,
you
it
know,
does.
one way that somebody else was doing it. So I don't know. I didn't study it long. So, but,
I mean, it's a
hmm,
very effective way
right.
um, in holistic or complementary stuff. I mean, everybody knows what a meridian is. You go to an acupuncturist if you've got migraine, and they will locate a certain zone in the body and alleviate the pain with a needle. Well, Nadis is very similar. Meridian is the trunk of the tree, and Nadis are the branches of the tree. There are thousands of them permeating the body. So they're involved in the transportation of pranic energy. Now, prana is the subtle agent through which the life of the body is sustained. So the more prana that enters and remains in the body, the higher the quality of life. A reduction in pranic energy results in the lowering of your vitality and ultimately a deterioration in the quality of your life. So where there is no
True.
prana, there is no life. Now,
True.
if you pour yourself a glass of water, if you take the glass of water and pour it backwards and forwards through the air over and over again until the water almost sparkles, you're rejuvenating it, revitalizing it with the pranic energy. And you can drink that and you'll feel invigorated because it will invigorate the chakras. So there are lots of different self-help things you can use to help the chakra and the assimilation of energy. All good stuff.
Right, right. Now, I have a question for you because, you know, through the years, the many years that I've done the work with the paranormal and, you know, also working a lot with magic, which you and I are actually writing about right now,
Yeah.
I've always stood firm with making sure that, and in the religious practices that I've been in, you know, the voodoo, the Santeria, all of these things, it was always very important to do these cleanses, to do, you know, spiritual cleansing, to clear the auric field of things that might be stuck in there, especially like, you know, attachments and just
Mm.
negative residual energy. It doesn't necessarily have to be an entity. There's energy everywhere you go. There's energy that's in the atmosphere, and it's going to have a tendency, this is, you know, what I've been taught my whole life, is that it's going to have a tendency to stick in that auric field, and we do cleanses to clear that off. Now, what are your thoughts about that? I mean, because, you know, I regularly use herbs, oils, salts, baths, smudges, all of these things to really kind of clear that stuff out. I mean, um, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, you're right, because whatever works for you is the right way to do it. Um, you're right in saying that, you know, all these discarded emotions, these discarded fragment thoughts, guarded by people from time immemorial, they're like germs and they do cling to a weak
Mm-hmm.
aura. They will infiltrate and cause all kinds of problems, not necessarily physical diseases, but they can do. Healers, and I'll probably get shot down for this, people who work in the healing profession, um, and I'm a registered healer, or I have been for some years. You specialize certain illnesses. I've known a lot of healers to specialize. They won't even consider other treatments for other illnesses. They specialize in certain diseases. They often end up with that disease. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
like
Absolutely.
contagious.
Oh, absolutely. I've seen that time and time again.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you're right. And I think smudging, oils, burning oils, I said the mind is the common denominator. You do have to cleanse yourself. And it doesn't matter how you do it, as long as you know it works for you. Now, the problem we have as mediums and radical mediums, because you and I are quite radical in our approach, you know, we don't conform. I certainly don't. You get shot down. You don't either. You get
No.
shot down by other mediums. You'll always be criticized. And if enough of them gang up on you, it affects you a little bit. And I've had this all my working life. But you know you're right, and you know it works for you. And I've always known it works for me. Sometimes it doesn't work fast enough, but as long as you've got the right way, the right thing, the right process, and it works for you, then it doesn't really matter. People have their own methods of working, but you do need to cleanse yourself every so often. And the mind is the common denominator. You cleanse the mind in any way that suits you and will work for you.
Meditation is very healing. And if you don't like if you can't sit still, a lot of people are like, I can't sit still. I can't still my mind. It takes years to be able to still your mind. I mean, when I studied shiatsu, it was like they said you have to have an empty head. And we were all like, what? Empty head?
Yeah, you
No,
can't.
you have to have an empty head.
Yeah,
And we were specifically trained on how to focus. And it is difficult. But, if you don't like that, you can do Tai Chi. Tai Chi is meditation in
yeah,
motion.
cool. Yeah,
Yoga is, I mean, I do yoga. It's amazing to get
yeah,
you to that point because it literally aligns you body, mind, and spirit. You become completely centered and everything is
yeah, yeah,
aligned. And that's when you're in that meditative state and you don't necessarily even realize it. But you can really do a lot with the yoga. And if you're doing the pranayama breathing while you're doing the yoga, that's even better because that's going to
yeah,
start charge that energy. But I have found, and this is what I've told a lot of people, if you're doing paranormal investigations and you're out here and you're going into these places and you're opening yourself up to who knows what, and you're picking up this residual energy. We're not talking about attachments, just energy that's left
mhm,
from other people, and if there's an energy exchange going on constantly at all times in the universe. So you're picking up this stuff from other people and places. And when you get out of your car, and I tell nurses this too, who work like in emergency rooms and where they're around the sick and the dying. When you get out of your car, and this is one thing that I do, no matter where I am. The minute I get out of my car, I take my shoes off, and I stand on the earth. I stand on the ground, and I do a few breathing exercises, and I visualize all of that going into the ground. You ground it, and that's a
yeah,
good way to kind of discharge it because you don't want to
yeah,
bring that stuff into your home, because then what happens when you get in your home, it's affecting the other people around you because again everybody's auric field is connected and intermingling, and you're bringing stuff into them.
yeah,
And a lot of people, I have been criticized for that. A lot of people have told me, oh, you're just scared, you don't want to do it. And it's like, no, 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 trust me, I understand the mechanics behind all
yeah,
of this. Like I'd get a call and they're like, well, I've got something in my house and I really need you to check it out, but I was doing a satanic ritual, and I go, no,
yeah,
no, no, not my demon, not my problem. And they're like, well, you scared? And it's like, I'm not qualified to handle that. I'm not qualified to ride that stallion, okay? You need to call somebody else because I know what will happen if I walk into that.
yeah,
What am I taking home to my health or my family, my animals? I mean, everything's going to be affected by my exposing myself to that. And so I have that, the 10-foot rule. I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. I'm not doing it.
hmm,
And that is why, because I do understand the mechanics behind it and what it's going to take to clear myself and how easily that can make someone sick. So it's like, no, not doing it.
yeah,
And I've been criticized for that because people are like, oh, well, you just don't want to do it. No, you're right. I don't want to do it. And I'm not the one that opened that portal, and I'm not going to be the one to come in there and close it. So, but, and I've been criticized a lot for that kind of stuff. But, you have to know where to draw your line, and you have to understand that everything is not physical, that all of this stuff that's unseen, this is what you're playing with, and you're dealing in an unseen world,
yeah, exactly.
and you have to understand what's going on in this unseen realm. These things that you're not seeing are still happening, whether you believe in them, whether you know about them, whether you see them, doesn't matter. This is what's going on, and this is what's going to happen if you neglect it.
You're really only as strong as your weakest point where
That is
disembodied
right.
energies are concerned.
That is absolutely
Um,
right.
and you have to prepare yourself for all eventualities. Now, regarding I spoke up very quickly about the Nadis. There are three major Nadis which are considered primary, and these are Ida Nadi, Pingala Nadi and Sushumna Nadi. Now, Pingala Nadi is the male aspect. It's connected to the right nostril and controls the left side of the brain. Ida Nadi is the female aspect. It's connected to the left nostril and controls the right side of the brain. Now, Sushumna Nadi extends from the brow chakra right to the Muladhara chakra at the base of the spine. And the other two, serpentine, they cross over it, touching each chakra en route. And it's important that when you're doing certain kinds of meditation, to be conscious when the air is flowing freely through your nostrils, that it is going somewhere down these channels. And you can give it a positive color, like white. We said last time, white light, but breathe it in and make sure it's being transmitted around the body, transported around the body to the different chakras. Now, if you're aware of that, you'll know that you're doing some good. And you can do that before you go to bed at night. Just, you only spend 10 minutes just being conscious of the three different channels. And these channels play an important part in the manifestation of your development, your personal growth and development. The other thing, which I should have said, I did say, but you got to have broad shoulders as a medium. And my wife regards myself as a veteran medium now. You reach a certain age and you're called a veteran medium. She's very cruel to me. But you tend to, you know yourself, you've seen many different things. It's probably different in America than it is
No, it's
in
not.
the UK.
No, I think it's worse here. I really do.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, I do. I think there's so many strains of mediumship that are blended with other things here,
Yeah.
and it's just like you're broadcasting there. You've got a lot more restrictions and a lot more integrity and a lot
Yeah.
more, especially, and then with mediumship, I mean, you've got the spiritualist church there that kind of
Yeah, that's it.
sets the guidelines for everything,
Yeah.
and they'll jump up and go, nope, nope, that's not right. So
Yeah.
I think you have a lot more structure. I shouldn't say restrictions, but you have a lot more
Yeah.
structure over there. Over here, it's just like, I'm a medium. I'm a Reiki
Yeah.
master. I'm
Yeah.
this. I'm that. I even saw somebody advertising, and they
Yeah.
called them. I don't remember the name of it, but they said I'm such and such monk, and it was like, okay, you're a woman. You're not that monk because you would have trained for that your whole life, and you're not in Tibet. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like that's absurd. And the title that they used was specifically for a male priest. And I was like, okay, you really aren't that. They would not have made you that, and you wouldn't have. And it was like, wow, all of this jack of all trades going on.
Yeah.
And I don't. Do y'all have that there? Is that
Yeah, well, it's the same everywhere, isn't it? I mean,
It's crazy.
when I started working in spiritualist churches, I was thrown into it. That was about 1979, and I really started to get known in spiritualism around 1981. And then you couldn't talk about not that I did, but you couldn't use tarot cards or speak about tarot cards. Even the aura was very furtive. It was very people, what they knew about the aura, they kept to themselves. But today is different. I mean, they'll have psychic fairs now. And a lot of spiritualist churches will allow people giving readings with tarot cards and crystals and any other way you can glean information from.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
find it,
And go ahead.
I was just going to say, I find it all a bit humorous in some way because it's taken, not all churches are the same. I've got to say that. There are some far
Right.
seeing spiritualist churches in the UK, very modern approach to development and spiritualism. And I could name them, but I could name them on one hand,
Right.
which I
Right.
won't do.
No, no,
But
don't. But no,
no,
here it's the same way here, and
yeah,
actually, I find it more sad than humorous because what a lot, like you obviously know much more than I do from what yoga I've studied. I mean, I mean, I don't know all the Indian names for stuff, and people just learn to scratch the surface on a lot of these things, and they really don't understand the behind the scenes, the energetics behind it. And honestly, if you don't study those Eastern philosophies or
Yeah.
other things like, if you're going to study Western stuff, the Western esoterics, which is, part of what you and I are writing about right now.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you don't understand the energetics of any of
Exactly.
this,
Yeah.
none of it's going to make sense. I mean, I've studied this stuff for decades, and just in researching for the book that we're working on, I'm finding out all that other stuff that I did not know, the
Yeah.
origins of where a lot of this stuff comes from, and it's all coming from the East or the Middle East, and then it's being brought
Yeah.
back to the Western world. But it is universal. It is
Exactly.
absolutely universal. So if you
Oh,
look at Ayurvedic medicine, if you look at Chinese medicine,
yeah.
they're not identical and they have different names for things, but there's a parallel that's going
Yeah.
on. And there's also a very thin line between healing and spirituality that's,
Yeah.
it's very, very connected. And if you look at these indigenous tribes, you see the same thing, but it all leads back to this energy,
Exactly.
whether you call it prana, chi,
Yeah.
universal life force, whatever you want to call it. It all leads back to that and understanding what's going on in that invisible world. And if you don't, you really don't. I mean, I don't want to say you don't
Yeah.
know what you're doing, but you don't understand the mechanics behind it or the implications of what's going on.
Exactly. I
And that's where
totally
you can
agree.
step
Yeah.
into a situation that you don't know how to get yourself out of.
I agree with you. And to quote a biblical quote, Jesus said, "Look to the east, from whence cometh all light." And everything we know today, the aura, chakras, everything originated in the East, Eastern traditions. There is a
Absolutely.
psychology behind it all. And in the centers that I've run, people have come up to me in my classes and said, but you have to know all the terminology, all the Indian terminology. And I said to them, well, you don't have to. But they're mnemonic ideas, mnemonic pegs. So if you uh, make an effort to learn by rote all the names, the Indian names, then you'll find other information will attach to them. You'll be amazed at what you do know and what you've learned over the years. So it's not absolutely essential, but Buddhist and Hindu philosophy, the fundamental principles underlying all religious beliefs. And I'm more the follower of, as you are, of Buddhism. Om Mani Padme Om. There's another uh, mantra which is very meaningful. The jewel in the lotus. And your mind can do all kinds of strange things, amazing things. And in yoga, you don't you do it as a physical discipline, a mental discipline as well. But it's also to reach samadhi, or what the Hindus call siddhis, which are the psychic abilities. And if you do yoga and you practice all the asanas and all the different hand gestures, the mudras, you'll find that you will develop abilities that you didn't think you'd develop. And these are the siddhis. These are the unusual abilities that a lot of the fakirs, a lot of the adepts and sages developed over the years. And once you've got those, you don't need to use them for good reasons. Many people prostitute their abilities by exploiting them, and it'll always
Right.
come back on you. I mean, the law of
Oh, of
karma is
course.
always in operation.
Oh,
So it's a fascinating
absolutely.
thing. And, Buddhism, the interesting thing is, um, one of the methods, and you've probably done it in yoga, is a lighted candle. If you stare at a lighted candle and make sure the lighting in the room is subdued, you stare at the candle for as long as you can. You resist the temptation to move your eyes away or close or blink. When you can't look at the flame any longer, you close your eyes, you apply your hands to your eyes, and you apply a little bit of pressure to the eyeball, and you wait for the after image to appear on the lens of your eye. Now, that will eventually disappear, but you do that 3 times. And eventually, if you do it every day, you'll find that this image, this after image, won't disappear because it affects the image making faculty of the brain. And it will help you with any latent abilities that you might have. In Hinduism, it's called the kasina. No, sorry, tratak. In yoga, tratak. But in Buddhism, it's called the kasina, the after image process. And it's something I've used for many, many years. And I've always found it quite effective. It's very much like looking at the crystal ball, using a crystal ball, which is effective too. So there are
Well,
many
with the
things.
yeah,
Sorry.
with the oh no, I'm sorry.
All
With the
right.
flame, with relationships that are flame for those people who really are kind of like, wait, where are they going with all this? When you're focusing on the flame, it's just like, like I said, we're writing about magic. When you do magic, lighting a candle, these things are the tools are not magic. It is a tool of focus. You're focusing on the
Yeah,
flame,
that's
and
it.
you do that.
Yeah.
I've taught people to use that to focus to be able to develop their psychic abilities.
Yeah.
You do it in magic, and the whole point of getting that impression to where when you close your eyes, you're seeing it in that third mind. That
Yeah.
is what you focus on when you're trying to meditate. The whole point is focusing on something like that, whether it be that. I mean, I was taught in shiatsu, you look at your thoughts as clouds, and you see them floating away, and the
Yeah.
whole point of it is to get to that point where that flame that you see in your third eye is all you see, and no other thoughts enter in your head. And that's when you know that you are in transcendental meditation, is when you've got nothing else going on and you
Exactly.
literally are in that moment. And it's just a tool, and you can use other tools too, but that is a great tool. That's
It,
awesome.
it's ideal for quietening the mind and
Mm-hmm.
making it more focused. A Western guru by the name of Dr. Mumford actually popularized that. He made it very popular in yoga. And he wrote a paper on, I forget what it was called now, but it was to do with complementary colors. He believed that when you close your eyes to a certain, if you look at something which is red, effectively, when you close your eyes, it will reverse, it will be blue. If you look at something white, you close your eyes, it's black, and you close your eyes. Everything has a complementary color. And he believed that
Quality, yeah.
the colors that when you close your eyes, they're the real colors. That's the astral color. And you learn a lot about the aura through it because it teaches you that the aura, when you look at the aura, people say, well, I can see the aura, but they can only see a minute part of it. And sometimes the aura is influenced by the color clothes you wear. For an example, if you're wearing a red dress and you look at the aura, you might see a lot of blue in the aura because it's influenced by the color you're
Yes.
wearing. So you have to learn to eliminate the colors that you're wearing. And we are affected by color. Your aura is affected. People like to wear the colors they like. They enjoy wearing, say, the color blue, so they wear it all the time. That's not the way it should be. Sometimes you have to break the barrier and wear the colors that you don't like wearing. And that will also change the polarity of your aura, your energy field. Not easy to do wearing colors you don't like, but if you do it, you look down at your dress then, didn't you? To see what color you were wearing.
Yeah. It's like, wait, what am I wearing? Oh yeah, purple, yeah.
Because I tend to wear pinks and blues. And I find it very difficult because if you look in my wardrobe, everything is pink and blue. And so I leave it to my wife really to buy the colors that she thinks I look well in. And then we're going back to our childhood then, our
Mm,
parents, influencers, and programmers.
that's true. That's
So,
true.
the chakras are programmed to think in certain ways. And this is why people grow up, they don't move from the environment they were born and bred in. They stay there, they get a job there, they buy a home there. Very few people break away from the tradition of their childhood. And if you do break away from it and move to a different area, or even a different country, you'll find your life will change on all levels. You'll
Oh yeah.
think in a different way. And it's true. Um, but I find the whole subject fascinating, don't you?
No, it really is, and it's so helpful. I mean, these a lot of this stuff, a lot of the knowledge that you have, I don't have, but a lot of this things I started studying many many years ago when I was in school, and I mean these are things I use on a day to day basis. I'm constantly falling back on that, and it's helped me immensely to develop that mediumship and the psychic abilities and all. I didn't I was born with a lot of it, but we always say we develop what we were born with, and I was born with a lot of it, but it was energy all over the place. But it was really when I started studying to be, the healing techniques is when I really started fine tuning some things, and I really started. I didn't set out to go, oh, I think I'm going to go be a medium and all that. Actually, when I was studying to be a massage therapist, and I was already licensed, and I was still in an advanced program. I started noticing, make a long story short, I started noticing that I had a problem with putting my hands on people. And I was going to these conventions and I was working on people like these fast little mini massages. And I was coming home and I was like, I don't know what I feel. I can't, I have a weird emotion and I can't figure out what it is. And finally I realized it wasn't my emotion. That's why I didn't recognize it. And I was literally picking up these, as these people were relaxing, their emotions and their stress was coming off, and I was soaking it up. And it got to the point where I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to put my hands on people. And I tried my hand at, talk therapy because I was also studying to be a Gestalt therapist. And they put me in my, training in a room full of depressed people. And even not touching people, just being in this room full of these people, I was coming home. I was like, okay, I'm still picking up people's
Mm-hmm.
emotions, and I wound up walking into one of the stores, one of the esoteric stores in the French Quarter, and it was a place called Mystic Curio, and the gentleman there was like so many generations a druid. And I walked in and he took one look at me and he said, come here. And he says, you look exhausted. And I said, I am. And he took a crystal. This crystal had to be this big. And he took it and he stuck it on my head like this. He says, now breathe. And he left it there
Mm-hmm.
for a few minutes. And when he finished, it was like, I mean, I felt this charge just come through me. And he literally cleared everything with that crystal. And he's like, don't do any of that. Whatever it is you did to get that, just don't do it again. And that just pulled me closer into more of the paranormal stuff and the occult stuff, because it was just amazing, because the minute I walked into his shop, he saw it, and he cleared it away immediately. And I was just completely amazed by that. But we're actually running out of time again. The time goes by
Wow.
so quick. We're talking about this stuff. It's fascinating. But if you want to learn more, you want to see more of the shows, you can always find me on Facebook. I've got New Orleans medium Kalila Smith. You can like the page. You can also friend me directly at Kalila1, Facebook.com, Kalila1. And Billy's on Twitter right now, right? How do they find
Yes,
you?
I'll be back on Facebook. It's
And
at
he's going to be
the
back on
Seaman.
Facebook.
Yeah,
Facebook's, he's having a little trouble, technical issues with his Facebook,
yeah.
but it's Billy Roberts, and definitely, I've got a page called Afterlife Mysteries. Come and like the page. We do a lot of discussions on there and so forth. But I want to thank everybody for coming out and joining us again for another episode of Afterlife Mysteries, and I hope you will join us again next time when we explore some more afterlife mysteries. Have a great day,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye bye.
Thank you.